Sri Lanka's Prime Minister says the country is officially bankrupt.
The South Asian country is struggling with an ongoing economic crisis, which is only worsening with each passing day. The country defaulted on its debt for the first time in its history as an independent nation back in May. Since then, its foreign currency reserves have run dry, along with the nation's fuel reserves, driving the country deeper into economic despair. Let's bring in SIshaan Tharoor now for more on this. He is a foreign affairs columnist at the Washington Post. SIshaan, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. I guess the biggest question is, how did Sri Lanka get to this point, right? And what does it mean to be a bankrupt nation in terms of getting financial help now from other countries?
Yes, it's an astonishing situation. And while we are sitting here in Washington, really watching the Ukraine war and focused on the geopolitics of Eastern Europe, it's very important to pay attention to Sri Lanka and to see how the downstream effects of the Ukraine war have provoked crises elsewhere. Now, I don't want to reduce this just to an effect of the Ukraine war. Sri Lanka's issues are deep and go stretch back years. There's been a legacy of government mismanagement, of massive overspending, of projects that made Sri Lanka indebted to countries like China. But what we've seen right now is that they are in a situation where they not only do they not have enough money to pay foreign reserves to pay for things like fresh shipments of oil, but they don't have enough money to pay for the debts they already have. So they are essentially bankrupt. They are in need of billions of dollars of aid. And all the while, you're seeing an incredible unraveling of an entire nation. There's no fuel, so people aren't able to go to their jobs. Schools have been closed. Food prices have surged. And the government is resorting to desperate measures like asking public sector workers to grow crops in their backyard, or even encouraging them to move overseas so they can get jobs abroad and send money back home. So it's a level of desperation and crisis that we've really never seen, especially in this one country.
Yeah, so you mentioned the government asking people to essentially grow their own food. I mean, what other kinds of measures are government officials taking or trying to take, at least in the short term here, to try and help people, given, that schools are closed, as you mentioned, and these shortages that you talked about?
Well, the focus right now is on finding lines of credit to at least restart some of the purchases of fuel, to get more fuel into the country so that things can start slowly working again. And that's an ongoing diplomatic process. The government itself is a bit of a mess. You have a prime minister who resigned, but a president who stayed on and is deeply unpopular. So there's a kind of tremendous political uncertainty on top of the economic crisis. And they're also now locked in these negotiations with the International Monetary Fund that have not borne any real fruit because Sri Lanka is in such an acute situation. It's important to watch the situation, not just in Sri Lanka, but elsewhere, because the pain that they're feeling, the rise in food prices, the really significant rise in food prices, is being felt in many other parts of the world, from Africa to other countries in Asia to Latin America. And this is, in many cases, a direct result of the disruptions caused by the Russian invasion of Ukraine.
It really is such a dire situation, and it sounds like they're really on this precipice at this moment. We'll continue to watch it closely.
And as SIshaan points out, though, it's not just Sri Lanka that probably stands to suffer this same fate, right?
Right, it's a really important point.
Yeah.
All right, SIshaan Tharoor, thank you so much for sharing your insight with us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.